right, here we go. It's the second hour of the MMA Junkie Radio Show. I want to officially welcome Sean Wheelock. He popped in real quick to do a mini former M1 and Bellator reunion with his former partner, Jimmy Smith. That was really, really cool. Sean has called many sports, not just outside of combat sports, but many sports, including the World Cup. We'll get his thoughts on the quarterfinal matchups that are coming up. But in combat sports, we've talked to him about karate combat, bare knuckle. He used to do the Victory Fighting Championships as well. Bellator, M1, the list goes on and on. But really, what brings you to town is you will be inducting our other in-studio guest, our great friend, Art Davie, the creator of the UFC and co-founder of the UFC. Welcome back, Arturo.
It's always a pleasure. Yeah. Always a pleasure with Brian Goze and the great gorgeous George. Absolutely.
Yeah, you know what? The UFC is your house, man. You built that house. That was a good song for Danny, the producer, to bring you back
to. That's what they tell me. I think even the press release said something about the creator and co-founder. I was just hoping they were going to say...
You were the creator and co-founder,
Is that
right?
what I was?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. All I know is that he's introducing.
Did you notice I didn't say co-creator?
Wow.
Creator. It all started here, and then you shared it, and then others helped you co-found something. But correct. You know what I mean? It's not like now if you and Horian, or you and Myritz, or you and Campbell, or somebody had both said, you know what would, and you know, oh, buy me a Coke, one of those things. Then there would be, but you thought of it, so. And then I got to call it that way.
Thank you, George. And not everyone understands that distinction. But in all fairness, Sean reminds me of it all the time. It says, look, if you didn't come up with the stupid idea and sell those other guys, he said, I wouldn't have the job that I have today.
Neither would we.
We wouldn't be here either.
That's a good point. I never thought about that. That's a good point. So you know, for me, this is a great week because the UFC has been very gracious and really treated me, you know, with royal gloves, little baby kid gloves last week. And that's kind of nice.
You already try on that jacket? Or was that later?
I did. I had it on this morning, and I got together with the seamstress, Carol, and she said, are you going to get any taller? I said, not by today. So she was going to take in a ½ inch but off the sleeve. But I got to tell you something. It looked pretty good.
And you get to present this guy.
Oh, what an honor,
huh?
What an honor. You know, I've talked about, and I'll talk about it tonight, that Art is somewhere between a best friend and a family member. And he's listed as dad in my phone, which I'll talk about. He's actually listed under dad in my phone. My girls call him Grandpa Art. My older daughter Ellie just turned 13. She got a lovely T-shirt from Grandpa Art that she wore 3 days in a row. She was so proud of it.
Very cool.
And it's funny because...
And of course co-authors here, not just friends and
yes,
you know, everything else you just said, co-authors. Go ahead, Sean. Sorry.
And it's funny that it's surreal. So we were at John McCarthy's house last night. John is also one of my best friends. And it's surreal for me to think, I'm a guy from Shawnee, Kansas, who was raised by a single mom, public school art teacher. My mom paid the $14.95. I'll talk about this tonight to watch UFC 1. I was in that group of 86,500 and something.
592.
592 to watch UFC 1. And 25 years later, here's Art Davie, who I have the great honor of inducting. John McCarthy will be there. I was at John's house last night. It's really funny how the world works, the twists and the turns in the world that you just cannot expect and imagine.
Speaking of twists and turns, this is a story that we've all told this many times of how you ended up where you are. Tonight's Hall of Fame, will there be any twists and turns, anything that I'm sure when you sat down, because you've gone through it so many times, I still wait for you to get emotional talking about it. Could that happen tonight?
You know, that's...
Yeah, you are cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, thank you guys in a way, because, you know, we've been on the road together, and you have seen me perform in front of an audience. Yeah. That's a very good question. I think that there's... I've got some friends and you know who have said to me, "Are you going to kind of really communicate how you feel?" Even Ant Evans over at the UFC said to me, he says, "You know, this is the opportunity for you to kind of let your hair down and let people know how you really feel about the whole thing." Mm-hmm. And I tell you, the speech that I finally did write, and I got a lot of great input, not only from Sean but from Ant over at the UFC. I could tell that they really wanted to acknowledge the history and the old school roots. And I think that's why, in a way, it's kind of symbolic and cool that I'm being inducted in the 25th anniversary year. So I think, George, there's a possibility and goes that I might be able to show some emotion tonight. I do know one thing. I've got a speech that I think pays all the right dues to all the right people. And I think it acknowledges, the kind of the keyhole story of what really went down. And I'm looking forward to having some fun with it, because I'm going to tell a couple of things that people haven't heard about before, back in the day of how this shit came together. But
the beach?
The famous beach.
Fight?
And John Wayne Bobbitt,
And the article you read?
The article, right? Yeah. So but I think Goze has a good question, and that is because I guess in a way I've always kind of taken this thing like, I did this back in the day, blah 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 blah. But I got to tell you something. With the kind of attention that I've gotten recently about this, and as Sean points out, and Ant points out over at the UFC, this is really an opportunity for you to take a bow and enjoy it. And I'm thrilled here coming today that I had fans come up to me right this morning, just now, from Ottawa and from South Bay in Los Angeles and say, you're Art Davie. And I said, I am? Yeah, and they shaking hands, taking pictures, signing autographs. So I'm kind of getting into the spirit of it, Goze.
Well, what I was thinking about last night was this is an opportunity where you're going to be standing there, and you've stood in front of audiences.
Yes.
But there's going to be multi-generation of UFC out there. So you could look out there and see a Don Fry,
right?
And then you could see a Dan Henderson,
yes.
Right? And you could see a Ronda Rousey, and that's different generations of the sport. That's what I thought may catch your eye.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And the excitement of being able to be with all of the people, some of them who I know very well. Jason Cussin is going to be there tonight. He's our original set designer.
Created
the Octagon. Mark Lucas, who did the first 27 UFCs and who created the template for how the UFC looks with cameras, lighting, and graphics. He's going to be there tonight. So for me, in a way, it's a combination of that, Goze. It's a combination of the fact that there is an entire room, a generational stepladder of people, not only who did MMA, but the fans. There'll be fans tonight who are some old school fans who know back in the early days, and some people that only came on in the last few years as fans. And then the opportunity for me to have all of my people that I knew. Kathy Kidd, the event coordinator, is going to be there. Elaine McCarthy, who last night told some friends when we were over her house, they said, what was Art Davie to work for in the old days? She said, God damn, he was a pain in the ass.
She said, I love him now, but back then, not so much.
Really? Oh, yeah. She wanted to tell a few of them stories about Art when I used to do the yelling thing. So, for me, it's such an opportunity to revisit the past and share it with people who lived it with me. And on that basis, Goze, I think that it's going to be a good deal.
Sean, you've known Art for a long time, and I'm sure throughout that time there's been a lot of birthday and Christmas cards. And what do you write a guy like that in a card? Is tonight going to be pretty much your biggest birthday card you could possibly write?
It's funny because we talk virtually every single day, and this is something that's been building and building. When John McCarthy and I had the old podcast 3 years ago, we started a hashtag campaign, which picked up some momentum on social media, but the UFC didn't pay attention. Induct Art. And McCarthy said it's ridiculous to have a UFC Hall of Fame if you don't have the creator of the UFC in it. So John will be there with Elaine. It's such a culmination for a lot of things, and I have this great mix of emotions where I'm incredibly proud, I'm incredibly happy for Art. I'm so honored that he asked me to induct him because you didn't have to. And you did. You could have had Don Fry or Tank Abbott, but you asked me, and that means the world to me. And I would have been there regardless, but even that step, this is something that I've been looking forward to for so long. When you go show to show, and I have so many shows coming up, I never allow myself to think 2 shows ahead. So the next show I commentate, then I start thinking about the one after that. But with this, since we found out about it, which was February, I think, or March?
Early March.
We had to keep it quiet for a long time.
He told you in March? He told me in January.
We can tell the story of how that went down on the air.
We turned him down, and then
you better let
Sean
a few calls,
and then he called Sean, right?
Well, no, we can tell the story, which is a nice story about how Art found out and how I found out from the UFC. But this is something I've literally been targeting, looking at, counting down the days to. It's amazing.
Well, Sean calls me one day on the phone in early March, and he says, I got somebody here I want you to talk to who knows you.
Well, the last time I did that, it was Hoyler Gracie, so he's thinking it's going to be someone like a Hoyler Gracie on the phone.
I think it might be somebody from Victory or from Invicta, et cetera. He ran into Omaha, Wichita. So he's got Ant Evans on the phone, and the two of them are like kids. They're both excited. I can see them both jumping up and down on the other end of the phone, and they want to know, Art, are you excited? And I'm going, what is it? What are we doing? No, you're in. I mean, in what? You're in the Hall of Fame. I thought it was a prank call. I said, wait a minute, say that again, but slower.
It was fantastic. And Ant Evans from the UFC, who's just been amazing. He's in charge of Fight Pass, in charge of the Hall of Fame. One of the best people in the industry. Yeah. So he and I had been conspiring to get Art in, and Ant had called me months earlier. And I know Ant because I've done so many Fight Pass shows too, the different series. And Ant said, I think we're going to get an Art, but promise me you won't say anything because I don't want to raise expectations. So he had been saying, I think we're going to get him in. I think we're going to get him in. And then he cold called me. I was like, oh, hey, Ant, what's going on? Guess what? I have Art in. And he said, do you want to tell him or should I? I said, let's do a three-way call. Let me call him right now. And again, yeah, the last time I saw Hoyler Gracie, I was like, oh, hey, because Hoyler gave Art his blue belt. Right. And so I called up Art, hey, someone wants to say hi to you, and it was Hoyler Gracie. So Art's expecting the same thing. It's like, Art, it's Ant Evans from the UFC. Guess what?
I think it was going to be Hoyler again. He broke my rib once, gave me a blue belt as a compensation, you know. But Sean was always pulling the rabbit out of the hat. Look, the true story is that we wouldn't have done the book if Sean Wheelock hadn't come to me and said,
is this legal on Amazon?
Legal? Yeah. Amazon and on the website, isthislegalbook.com. Doing so well. We're shipping books now to places like India and the Philippines.
Yeah. Cool.
So, yeah, which is really great. And the response to the book has been really strong. And, of course, now it was optioned in January, and that continues to move forward, and we're getting very close to an announcement. So we think that the
Major motion picture.
Major motion picture, right? Hey. Studio film. And right now, the script which Sean and I have reviewed, which is so good, it's better than much better than the book.
Yeah.
It's better than the book. And it looks like that everyone that they've showed it to over at UTA and William Morris Endeavor thinks that it's a winner. So we'll see what happens.
You know what I find unique about the book? This is what I tell people. There's so many books out there right now about mixed martial artists, about mixed martial arts in general. But I feel like if you're really going to get into that, you have to read this book and Big John McCarthy's first so that you can appreciate whatever it is you're reading later.
Goze, you're so right about that, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I think the key to that is what you're pointing towards, and that is these were the two books that were written by people who were there at the very first show.
Right.
So they're not journalists going back and exhuming the past. These are people who actually did it. And in my particular case, it was when I had the original idea, the brainstorm, and then had to be walking around for 3 years as a man possessed, telling people about it, and they would look at me and go, that's not legal, you can't do that. So, you know, John and I have the unique perspective.
Well, not just people, but Chuck Norris.
Oh, that's where the book title comes from, right?
That's where the book title comes from. And, you know, the HBOs and the Showtimes and the ESPNs. I tell the story that 25 years ago, truth be told, this weekend, Art Davie was pitching the UFC to ESPN.
Yeah?
That's the true story. This weekend.
You've obviously heard about the contract a few months ago. Okay.
And, in fact, my funny line about it is, hey, guys, over at ESPN, you could have gotten the UFC for a hell of a lot less than $300 million a year back in the day, baby.
Can you tell us a little bit how that went the first time? Was it just immediate close of the door or some dialogue?
Well, the funny story I've told a number of times, and I love telling, is that everyone I would go into would start with the same pitch with me. They would tell me, look, we really love boxing. I mean, Lou DiBello over at HBO said to me, I'm a boxing man. Jay Larkin said the same thing to me at Showtime. Michael Oresco said virtually the same thing at ESPN. They all kept saying to me, you know, this really belongs in the video game. Haven't you heard about Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat 2? I said, yes. I said, I got this. They said, well, come back when you get something else. So it was always a pitch, and I would always get a nice pat on the back. Hey, you're a nice guy, and it's amusing what you told us, but this ain't ever going to work. Nobody's ever done this. And we ain't even sure if it should be done or could be done. It probably is illegal. And what about if somebody really gets injured? And where are you going to get the fools to do this? So, you know, who are you going to sucker into getting on this train? And you going to be the conductor? Yes, sir. Well, we think you're crazy, but when you get something else, I remember Jay Larkin, the late Jay Larkin told me, he said, when you get something else, you bring it to me. He said, because, you know, it's a good presentation you got, but this ain't credible. So that was the reaction I got, George. People just couldn't embrace this. It was not in their frame of reference.
There's this weird alternate history that we uncovered when we were writing the book of how things could have gone. This could have been on ESPN. Dan Gable, and Dan was 45 or 46 at the time. Art certainly would have taken Dan Gable, but Art just kept calling Dan Gable to say, I need a top wrestler. Had Dan Gable said, I'm in, of course he would have been in, but that wasn't the play. Dan Gable would not return Art's phone call.
His assistant, Tom Brand, wouldn't return.
There's another great wrestler, would not return the phone call.
You know,
I would think the wrestlers would have been like wanting to show the boxing community what's up.
Herb Perez from Taekwondo, who was at the time the greatest American ever out of Taekwondo. Yes. I don't know anything about Taekwondo, but that's what I'm told. Said no.
Turned down $10,000.
Right. Benny the Jet Urquidez, Leon Spinks, Bone Crusher Smith, who had a great fight against Mike Tyson. Mark Gastineau. All of these. Bart Vale. Bart Vale wouldn't pick up your phone call.
Dennis Alexio.
Hung up the phone on you.
Dennis Alexio turned me down twice. The second time, I offered him $50,000 to fight Horace Gracie at UFC 5 in a super fight. I was on the phone with him about 32 seconds, and I heard this big
Well, by then the word was out, right?
The word was out. But to answer your question, early on, I was fortunate in that a former wrestler, a gal wrestler by the name of Phyllis Lee, and she was a great manager, and she handled Dan Severn. She kept calling me every day for 2 weeks after she saw UFC 1. She said, I got the answer for you. I said, what is it? She told me about him, and I went and looked him up, and I saw, well, he wasn't like today's wrestler, but he'd been a master class wrestler. He had legitimate credentials, wrestled in Turkey and Russia and Germany. And she finally got us together. We meet in a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown in L.A., and he's doing a work with Al Snow from the WWE.
Oh, Dan Severn.
Yeah, Dan Severn. And they're upstairs doing this in front of a private group of Chinese businessmen. And I go up there and watch, and I'm the only non-Chinese person in the room, along with Phyllis, Dan, and Al. And I watched them do this work. Afterwards, we went down, and I ordered a giant ginger fish, and I'm eating it with chopsticks. And so Dan Severn to this day says, I got an Italian guy who looks about like a Joe Pesci kind of guy, a character, and he's eating this Chinese fish with chopsticks, and we're talking about going into this event. And he said, all I remember was Art kept saying to me, look, Dan, you have to understand, people are really going to hit you. You've never been hit. And he proceeds to tell me about a match that he had in Turkey where he said, dirty fighting, elbows, fingers in the eye, fish hooking, it was all done. He said, I can handle myself.
Oh, yeah, international wrestling's
exactly.
brutal. King Mo's shared some.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you finally understand that those guys did that, then it was very legitimate and appropriate that Dan Severn came in. And when Dan came in, it opened up the floodgate, because that opened it up to a friend of his by the name of Don Fry, the Predator. And suddenly, once I had the wrestlers in, and by the way, when you think about it, after UFC 5, the Gracies were done with the UFC.
Yeah.
Horian saw that I was bringing in the wrestlers. And I had seen a videotape at Horian's Academy of Mark Schultz rolling with Hickson for 25 minutes. It took Hickson that long to get his arm. And I looked at that and I thought, oh my God, I got to get a wrestler in here. As soon as them wrestlers figure out Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and how to neutralize the guard, I said, these guys are going to, and they knew how to cut weight, they knew how to train, they knew cardio. I said,
pushing their limits, not breaking others.
Pushing their limits.
Can I segue into something?
Sure.
I think I've asked you this before, but I honestly forgot. Alexander Karelin?
Yep.
Was there a phone call or how?
Early on, I had said to Horian,
the great Russian four-time Olympic champion.
Alexander Karelin was known as the experiment. The feeling among American sportscasters and knowledgeable journalists was that he was a product of Russian science. Yeah. He had a 4% body fat. He was 6'3", 285 pounds, heavy boned, a super mesomorph. And he had won a number of the Greco-Roman titles, and he was invincible and undefeatable. And I remember talking to the Kowalski brothers, who had been over to Russia, knew him well, and it was one of my home run pass attempts to bring in people outside the box. I mean, for a while, I'm trying to figure out who I can get to Tyson. You know, I had as much chance to get to Tyson as I had to get to Karelin, because the Kowalski brothers said, Art, you ain't got enough money to bring him out of Russia. You know what they would want? And so, but yet I let it out at a luncheon meeting on Friday with Horian over at the Brazilian restaurant. And Horian went to me, he said, Karelin? I said, you know who he is? He said, yeah. I said, well, what do you think? He said, I better get Hickson.
That's right. That's right. I knew okay, that's right. You have told me that before.
And yet,
I remember that.
And yet I didn't have George.
That's
I didn't
funny.
have Karelin lined up in any way, shape, or form. But just being able to drop that on Horian, and that started the ball rolling for the Gracies to think that, you know something? These guys are catching up. They's cross-training. They're getting smarter. And Art keeps bringing in bigger studs. And it ain't going to stop.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then, of course, we had that meeting with Hickson over at the WOW office, in which he asked for $1 million.
The dad, Helio, was present there.
Helio was present, and that would basically, and Helio told him, he said, when I did this in Brazil, we did it for the honor of competing. Money wasn't the primary consideration. And yet I got to tell you a very interesting story. Last night, John McCarthy talked about the fact that all the guys he's ever known in MMA and in jiu-jitsu, he said in a way, the guy who was the purest martial artist and the one least interested in making money, really, was Hickson. He was always shocked about the story I told him about Hickson, in effect, hitting me up for $1 million. He said, but you have to remember, after Hoxton died, he said he went up to that tree on his property, built a little tree house, sat up there every day looking at a picture of Hoxton, came down one day and said to his wife, Kim, you can have the bank accounts, you can have the money, you can have the gym, you can have everything, and we're getting a divorce. And he went to Brazil and changed his entire life and lifestyle. So John's opinion shared with me last night. He said, of all the guys I've ever known in jiu-jitsu and MMA, the purest, and the guy who I think didn't give a damn about money, he was offered $4 million. $4 million
in Japan?
Sakuraba. And when Hoxton died,
I thought it was just $1 million.
No, it was $4. John confirmed last night.
That was from Pride.
Exactly. Yeah. So here's a guy that had at one point, and remember, he was the first $1 million baby in MMA. Was Rickson Gracie. Not in America, but in Japan. They're ready to put $4 million into his hand, and Rickson says, sayonara, Kiyohara, and he moved on. So John's opinion last night just blew me away. I sat there stroking my chin and going, damn, I didn't know that.
Even, do you remember the first time we went to the Torrance Gracie Academy?
Yes.
And then the first time we went to Rickson's Academy. There's a big difference.
Yes.
You know, but first, the Rickson Academy, you don't even know where you're going. You think you're going to like a garage or something, and all of a sudden you go, what? There's an academy here? Like, you could even tell back then, like, money was just, you know, it was just all about teaching.
I've seen Hoxton teaching as well. And I remember one guy that was like, man, I'm tired. He goes, you can rest when you get home. I mean, he was like, as a young teenager, you could already tell he was destined for greatness. He was really, really strict with the guys and things like that. But I remember he told him, I'm tired. He goes, you can rest when you get home. You know, come on. And he was pushing his guys, and he was kind of running the class. It's West LA, I remember. It's
fascinating when you look at all the Gracie kids and who all looked up and worshipped their fathers, to say the least. I'm talking about Horian, I'm talking about Royce, and I'm certainly talking about Rickson. And I think in all fairness, all of them approached jiu-jitsu in a different way. Some, like Hoxton, were in a sense reluctant warriors and probably felt that they could never match their legendary father. It's fascinating to look at Henner today, Henner Gracie, and to see how much of a marketing guru he's become, and to see what kind of a great teacher and trainer Huron is. But all of them had to have an alpha male relationship with alpha male fathers. So it was not an easy situation. And you, trained in psychology, could understand that, George, but it goes better than most.
Well, I just got my Gracie black belt here on the app right now, just like 10 minutes ago. So.
Is that right?
There's definitely an evolution.
The world has
there,
changed. Right?
Wow.
Have you ever seen Holes Gracie train with Rickson Gracie in the 80s, the footage on YouTube?
Yes, yes.
He's like a blonde-haired Gracie.
They used to call him Laura because that's the Brazilian word for blonde. And
I bet you, sorry to cut you off, Hart, but I bet you if this was the 35-year reunion, in other words, if everything got pushed up about 10 years, that might have been a guy you would have been gunning for. But he died in a tragic hang gliding accident like in 85 or something.
Whenever his name came up in and among the Gracies that I was with, there was always a kind of a hushed tone. He was the first one I heard who began to look over to Sambo. He began to look at other martial arts. He was the first cross trainer.
He was Rickson's mentor.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, if anything, if Rickson broadened his skill base, it was because of the inspiration of Holes. So he was a legendary figure among the Gracie boys.
We have to wrap up here, but I wanted to get your thoughts, Sean, on the World Cup. We're down to 8 teams. Who do you like to bring home the World Cup in 2018 here?
Yeah, you know, my wife is English, so my 2 girls, Ellie and Hadley, are half English. So I'm always going to pull for England after the United States. So that's been my side.
Nice win the other day.
But I really, as you guys know, and people who follow me know, I'm a huge, and apologies to those of you who aren't, a huge Manchester United supporter. So Belgium with Lukaku. Yeah, there you go. And Courtois, such a great goalkeeper.
With Sweden.
That's very true.
Yeah, so we got a couple guys. We got Rashford going.
That's exactly right.
Ashley Young going for England.
Martial didn't make France, but that's okay.
A lot of Man U guys.
It's okay, but Belgium's a sleeper. It's such an interesting World Cup because obviously Italy didn't qualify, the Netherlands didn't qualify, Spain is gone, Argentina is gone.
Germany went early.
Germany loses in the group stage after dumping the opening match. Brazil is picking up momentum. It's wide open. So I'm supporting England right now, but I'm keeping my eye on Belgium. What do you guys think?
I think the winner of Belgium-Brazil has a good chance.
I agree. I said that last night at McCarthy's.
France is very talented, and the way they played Argentina, if they play like that, they'll win. They'll win it all. But I watch the English Premier League so much because of Man U that there is part of me is pulling for them as well.
It's a great World Cup, and I know a lot of Americans haven't been watching. And I read somewhere that I think the ratings are down almost 50% across the board for Fox.
I heard that too.
But even if people are casual footy fans, soccer fans, now is the time to watch to get into it. Obviously, you want to follow the United States and you want to wave the flag and have patriotism, but it is so brilliant. It's so passionate. When I commentated the World Cup in 2006, it was like literally a life-changing experience for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much for stopping by. We'll be seeing you in a few hours at the UFC Hall of Fame ceremony. Our Davie will be going in the contributor wing. He is the creator and co-founder of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And Sean Wheelock, his good friend, also veteran combat sports broadcaster, he will be inducting him. So I cannot wait for this. And thank you both for stopping by the MMA Junkie Radio Show.
Thank you so
guys.
much.
All right.
Always a pleasure.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We are going to be talking to Randy Couture about some PFL tonight, PFL 3. That's right. They are paying out a lot of money. 6 different winners at the end of a regular season and a playoff will win $1 million. We'll talk about that headline bout. Jake Shields and Ray Cooper III. He fought the dad, and now he's fighting the son, Jake Shields. Yeah, so it's kind of a unique twist there. We'll talk about all that when we come back. And we also have Dan Henderson visiting the studio, so stay close. We'll be right back. It's the MMA Junkie Radio Show on SiriusXM Rush 93.
They can drink Mentos-flavored Diet Coke without their stomachs giving a single thought. They are gorgeous George and Goze. And this is MMA Junkie Radio.
I'm not going to do a read because we have Randy Couture on hold, and you don't keep Captain America waiting.
Nope.
But I do want to tell people, for those of you that are immersed in the NBA free agency period, you got to put it on Channel 86 at any point throughout the day. They have some fabulous shows, and they'll bring you up to date on all the free agent signings and all the different possibilities out there. All right, PFL. Remember, PFL 3 is tonight in Washington, D.C., 9 p.m. Eastern start time on NBC Sports Network. If you have DirecTV, like we do, it's channel 220. Check it out. And on Facebook, pre-fight and post-fight, you got to put it on Pro Fight Live. So it's facebook.com/Pro Fight Live, and you'll get some prelims, and then you'll get a post-fight wrap-up show. All right, now joining us now on the hotline is Randy Couture, the legend. He will be calling the fights alongside Todd Harris and Boss Rudin tonight. What's up, Randy? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you guys?
Good, good. Welcome back to MMA Junkie Radio. You're on with George and Goze. Always a pleasure, sir. We are just stoked. Every 2 weeks we're getting some PFL. It's been a great summer here. They have an awesome concept, a huge prize, huge stakes for all the fighters, and it all gets done in 6 months. Tell me, Randy, what has stood out in these first 2 weeks for you on how the PFL has been, doing something different outside the box here in mixed martial arts?
Well, I think the question was with asking these fighters to fight, 4 or 5 times in 6 months and turning them around every 5 weeks. Were they going to fight conservative? Were they going to try to, eke it out, get the W, not sustain any damage? And I think that question was pretty clearly answered in the very first go. These guys just they got after. We had 5 first-round stoppages out of 11 fights in that first show. It was amazing. And we had similar attitude going into the second show. So I'm excited tonight for the third show, the welterweights and the middleweights. There's some great matchups on this card and some interesting stories. And I think these guys have just been laying it out there. They've been getting after it. Obviously, $1 million on the line in the postseason play. But it is an interesting concept, and these guys have been fun to watch.
Randy, it's kind of like a two-headed monster. If you think too much about the future matchup and not getting hurt, isn't that basically when you get hurt?
You're absolutely correct. And I think the right approach is to do exactly what these guys are doing, which is go out, cut loose, let the cards fall where they will. Things are going to happen. It's still a contact sport, but you got to secure the victory, and you can't worry about getting injured. You got to go out and do your thing, do your job.
Is it like a football season where most of these guys, they should have done the heavy lifting prior to the tournament, and now it's going to be about executing on fight night and then just staying healthy in between fights? Like kind of like in the football regular season, like you have all your hard training camp early on, then after that, you just got to stay healthy to make it to the dance.
Yeah, I think that's certainly strategically something they need to consider. I don't think you want to go into any fight worrying about whether you're going to get hurt or sustain a cut or any of that stuff. I think you just got to go out, fight, face that problem, solve that problem that's standing across from you that night, and worry about the rest of it when you have to. And I think most of these guys are handling that really, really well.
Randy, in the co-main event, we have a Bakbuk Bar, Nurmagomedov, and I'm sure I butchered his name. But what I've noticed is we have a lot of Eastern Europeans along with a lot of North Americans and Brazilians. But can you talk about the invasion of the Eastern Europeans, Dagestan, Russia? They are coming strong. You wrestled internationally. What's in the water out there?
Well, we seem to have at least 3 or 4 Russian or Dagestanis on each and every card. Obviously, this is significant money for them in their culture. They have a very, very strong, rich heritage in combative sports, whether it be freestyle or Greco-Roman wrestling, boxing, obviously combat sambo is a huge thing there. A lot of these guys come from that background, and they're tough. They're going to be tough for anybody to handle. And they're fun to watch, so it's been fun for me as a commentator. And welcome to my world, pronouncing some of these names.
Yeah, you got to give them nicknames or something. All right, Randy Couture here on the MMA Junkie Radio Show tonight, PFL 3 on NBC Sports Network, Catch the fights live. The main card starts at 9 p.m. Eastern start time. Again, that's Channel 220 if you have DirecTV. Otherwise, check your local satellite and cable listings and Facebook. All right, it's facebook.com/ProFight Live, and you can catch prelims there. All these fights mean something here in these regular season matchups that lead to playoffs that lead to $1 million in 6 different weight classes. All right, Goze, real quick, what do you have for the natural Randy Couture?
Well, I like that you introed him as the natural because that's what I thought when I was listening to his commentary. You got this booth here. You got 4 guys in there. And the conversation that you guys are having seems like you would have even if the mics weren't there. How natural has this broadcasting come for you?
It's been fun. Obviously, it's something I used to do with Fox and in other places. And so to get a chance now with the PFL to do it again, to talk about the fighters, I think we as fighters see some things that the average fan doesn't recognize or doesn't know what they're looking at. So to have a guy like Boss or Eve Edwards, sitting there and basically chatting about the fights, about what we see, about the approach these guys are taking and the technique and tactics they're using is a blast for me.
Is there one thing you can say on the broadcasting side, analyzing fights, that you've been able to come back to Extreme Couture, hop into the practice and tell everyone, guys, this is the one thing that I've picked up from the other side of the table?
Well, I mean, you put the coaching hat on, and it's the same thing. You got to relax, go out, have fun, do what you train to do. And if you make a mistake, it's part of it, and we can fix that. But you got to relax and go out and have fun first, or what's the point? And getting your fighters to recognize that or do that is an issue sometimes. So it doesn't change. It doesn't matter whether I'm sitting there commentating and seeing guys that are way too keyed up and spending way too much energy before the fight, or whether I'm wearing a coach's hat and seeing some of my athletes taking that same approach.
Definitely. Randy, thank you very much for the time. Thanks for squeezing us in. Break a leg tonight, PFL 3 on NBC Sports Network, 9 p.m. Eastern Start Time. We really appreciate you coming on the MMA Junkie Radio Show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, folks. We're going to take a quick commercial here. That was Randy Couture, and we're going to cruise to the finish line here with Dan Henderson. So stay close. We'll be right back. It's just 2 minutes. Pay some bills, and we will finish here this great show that we have had. Man, it's just been star after star, and one of my favorites right here in studio. So it's getting better than that. We'll be right back.
for being too loud and too good looking. Once again, here's gorgeous George and Goze.
If you play fantasy sports, SiriusXM has a channel just for you. Listen to Fantasy Sports Radio to hear expert advice from the top fantasy baseball and fantasy football analysts. Whether you need help setting your fantasy baseball lineup or you want help to know who the breakout players in fantasy football will be this season, the place to be is Sirius 210. XM87 is streaming on your phone or at home on SiriusXM, connected devices, and speakers. Want to welcome to the show the legend himself, Dan Henderson. And, of course, we're bringing back Dave Manley. Welcome, Dan. How you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good. Plenty of times on the phone. First time in our studio. Now you know you weren't talking to a couple knuckleheads all the time.
No, I was.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that could be
now
confirmed.
I know for sure I was.
Just solidified it?
Yeah.
Well, two things. For one, again, we talked to you when your fight was going to be, when we heard the announcement that your fight will be inducted, which is tonight, versus Shogun Rua. So, yet again, congrats on that. I mean, not 1 week can go by when someone doesn't bring that up at some point, either on this show or just in fan talk forums and chat rooms and things like that. So,
thank you.
You were half of it, and you were the winning party, so I'm sure it's going to be great for you. I don't think Maurice is going to be there, but either way,
I don't think so.
I'd still want to be the Dan party here on an induction like that. Two, you had an amazing career. We enjoyed covering it, and three, that bobblehead's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, and then
yeah.
I guess you guys can thank Bisming for that bobblehead too.
Yeah,
he was the other half of that one.
He was. Yeah, did you hear him reference it the other day? He's actually kind of poking fun at himself a little bit. So.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, he said something along the lines of if somebody was arguing a stoppage, he goes, well, if he wasn't out, then I wasn't out at UFC 100, so it's good that he can have a crack at it. But anyway, seriously, we'll talk about the ball in just a sec, but seriously, I guess never in person, we thanked you just for, everything you did for the sport. You had quite a run, man. You won a tournament, a UFC tournament. You won remember the King of the Kings tournament in Rings? He won that one as well. That was 32 people. Babalu, Nogueira was two of the skins on the wall. I forget the other ones. I know Henza was in that tournament. Former Pride middleweight and welterweight champion. And you won a welterweight Grand Prix and a Strikeforce light heavyweight title. Fucking A, man. No wonder you were done when you were done.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I did it for a while and accomplished quite a bit, and had fun along the way. So
now the price is more than $1 million to get you in there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I announced that I was going to be retiring after that last fight, I was serious about it. I thought about it. It wasn't like, I'm just going to say I'm going to retire and it can always come back. But no, I was.
There's been no itch or nothing.
Not really, no. I mean, I miss the competition a little bit, but I don't miss the preparation at all. So, I'm good with it.
What do you do now aside from being, father and gym owner and everything else?
I don't know. It seems like I don't do much, but I am always doing something. So I'm just busy all the time, on the go all the time, and get in there to coach when I can, and not as much as I should, but I'm in there, 2 or 3 days a week, hopefully.
George talked about the itch to fight. What about something else within the sport? Because the other day when we were at Bellator, we saw Randy Couture. We see what he's doing PFL. We saw Frank Trigg. We thought about the old Raw days, right? And we saw you walk by. We thought about you three. Is there anything else outside that you would want to do? Maybe some of that broadcasting or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind doing some analysis stuff. I don't know, about calling the actual fights, but talking about them afterwards or beforehand, I think I would like to do. Kind of pick the strategies apart.
Is there one thing that when you look at this new generation of fighter, I brought up the Raw days, right? I think now it's like a dance studio or something. I passed by there the other day.
Oh, really? I was never at their gym.
Oh, no?
In El Segundo?
No.
What's one thing?
You're just on the website?
Probably.
Because you were Raw, right? Real American Wrestling?
The first couple of years of my career, and then I left them.
Okay.
What's the one thing when you look at the new generation of fighter? I mean, they got these nice cushy gyms now, the UFC PI. What's the one thing that gets on your tits about these guys?
I don't know. I think, I guess it's a sense of entitlement. That I don't think it's necessarily just the fighters. It's the generation kind of has that. My kids are that way a little bit, and just they feel like they're entitled to things that we had to work a little harder for. So. Yeah, I think that it's that way. Just things are a little bit easily accessible now with all the social media and all the online stuff that we didn't quite have back then to promote ourselves. So I think that probably sets them a little bit apart between how it used to be and how it is now.
The other day, Archuleta got a win over at Bellator, and people were saying, wow, like the, what do they call it, the high desert, Victorville. They got that Dominic Reyes guy, and of course Joe Stevenson back in the day, Archuleta, a lot of tough fighters. A lot of people forget you're from that area, even though you're now in Temecula.
Right.
It's taken a while, but it seems like, that little part of California is starting to produce some good fighters.
Yeah, I mean, we knew the Archuleta family back when I was in high school. My dad had the kids wrestling program, and his older brothers were in that program, and I kind of moved away shortly after that, but they were still a big part of the wrestling community up there, and it's good to see that he's doing so well and representing the high desert like that. Yeah. And Joe Stevenson as well my brother coached him in high school, my dad coached him in college, and now he's just became a part of my gym down in Temecula. He's going to transition to being there a lot more often. Right now he's a couple days a week. So,
all right. Well, let's talk about a little bit, Dave. You said that Dan kind of helped put you on the map.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like that was the first one that actually gave you the time for a meeting, and he's your favorite fighter.
Yeah,
like you told us earlier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I owe everything to Dan, and I was just right before we got on the air, I was just telling Dan how much I appreciate him and thank him, and for him saying yes. I mean, I tell the story that Dan changed my life by just saying yes, let's move forward, and no, I appreciate it. But even more than that, I appreciate Dan's career. I appreciate everything that Dan has done, and like I was saying before, watching Dan fight, it's like kind of a testament to what we all have inside of us, the will to keep on going, and when you get knocked down, to get back up, and we can all appreciate that, and that's something that's really special about Dan. So yeah.
What do you think of all that? You've been in video games, and people will stop you, especially on these MMA weekends, for pictures and tell you about your fights, and now you have bobbleheads. I mean, aside from the fighting, what's it been like the outside of fighting and everything that's come with it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I've been a part of the sport since a long time ago, and so I've
you were on the undercard of Goliath, right? And David?
Hey, you had that.
No, I was the main event for that one. They just stole the show.
Oh, yes, that's right.
No, they, just watching the sport evolve over the years, and it slowly progressed into, being stopped more often and taking pictures, and then video games came, and a lot more TV, and now these awesome bobbleheads. It's just, pretty cool to be a part of the history of it, and to be in the sport during that whole transition to become mainstream. So, I'm pretty thankful that I was able to have such a long career and stay fairly healthy most of the time, and have a big support group with my coaches and my family to stand behind me, and I don't think any of it would have been possible if we didn't have super fans like Dave here that just loved the sport and loved it for the right reasons, not just wanted to see blood and guts out there, and just appreciated all the fighters and the hard work that they put in, and I think that's why he's so passionate about these bobbleheads.
You are going to get inducted tonight?
Not me.
Well, we the fight, sorry.
Yeah.
And you will be one day. You know that, right?
Well,
just go like this, like the bobblehead.
I know
that. I'm a badass.
I would imagine so, but like I told people when I was fighting, it's not the reason why I was fighting to hopefully one day be in the Hall of Fame, but it is a pretty cool honor to be acknowledged that way, all the hard work that you put in.
Well, the fight is going in, you versus Mauricio Shogun Hua. I know we asked you this before, but have you had a chance to watch it one more time, a couple more times? Because I'm sure you're going to be talking about it a lot tonight, tomorrow, or this whole weekend. Did you see anything else, or did it bring anything out in you on what an epic night that was?
I actually have not watched it in probably a couple years. I should have watched it just to have it a little more in my head, but I think that fight itself is burned into my memory pretty well. So I mean, I pretty much remember everything that happened in that fight and how it went. And
I know this might sound silly, but honestly, Were you ever so exhausted that had they just said Mauricio won, could you have been content with just the performance and what a great fight it was? Or
no, because I mean, and I think that's part of what I have always said, that the fight wasn't as exciting to me, knowing what I knew in my head in that 5th round, that he wasn't able to hit me with anything. I was tired. He was sitting on top of me. I never felt in danger of being finished at all, not even close, and I knew I beat him up for 3 rounds pretty bad. Almost finished him in the 3rd, and then the 4th round was close, but I figured he might have won that one, and he was winning the 5th, but I definitely had the decision. So in my mind, I already won the fight, and there's no way that he was going to finish me. So that kind of takes away from the excitement that all the fans weren't sure what was going to happen, if he was going to be able to finish me or not, and it definitely was a tougher fight than I expected, and didn't really want to do that one again, even though I did.
After they scraped you guys off the canvas and they lifted up your hand, I'm sure you spent time with family, friends, got a bite to eat. But let me tell you something, man. People just wouldn't stop talking about it. People were having beers to it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, what you guys do is an amazing thing. And us fans, you guys live it for those 25 minutes. I'm sure you carry it in your soul, in your mind, whatever, your memory. But for us, man, it's like you gave us a memory. You know what I mean? So it's worthy of all these thousands of people that are going to be there to salute you for.
Yeah, I mean, after I went home and watched the fight, I was like, well, I get it now. It's definitely had some excitement, and if you didn't know what was going on in my head at the time, then you'd have been a little nervous, I guess.
That fight could only have taken place in the Roman Coliseum if it wasn't in San Jose, right?
And the same
like
night
if you pick it up, you got to go.
Alvarez
Or else
fight.
could you have it? It'd have to be like in the Roman Coliseum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. This weekend, aside from the induction or the Hall of Fame ceremony, you're also going to be at the Las Vegas Fight Shop. So let me repeat that. 10 a.m. to 11:30 is when Dan will be there at the Las Vegas Fight Shop. It's in the Miracle Mile inside the Planet Hollywood. And then from 12 to 1:30, Chuck Liddell will be there. They are in the first generation of the MMA bobbleheads. And we have Dave Manley here, the creator of it, who unveiled the Bruce Buffer one earlier on today's show.
Yeah.
And Dave, this is great weekend for you, right?
It's an epic week. And like I said, coming from last year's week here, which was not epic, this is fantastic. I'm living a dream.
What would you have done if because you said you get the fighter input, right?
Yeah.
What if Dan didn't want to do this one? He just said, just give me there standing there like this.
No.
You push back on that, or you let him go have whatever he wants?
No, come on, man. No way. We need to get the H-bomb in somehow, some way.
Yeah.
No, Dave definitely has a pretty good vision of what, he is instilled in his head, what he remembers each fighter that, a good pose would be, and he's pretty spot on with a lot of it.
You're already a gangster, but you know what'll be a real gangster move in a few months? Buy a bunch of those and give them out as Christmas gifts. Your own bobblehead, right, guys?
They don't have to do that.
Yeah. What's anyone going to say to you?
He doesn't have to.
This goes from me to you. You're welcome.
We're gonna have
your training
Christmas
partners, coaches, everybody.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna have a good Christmas, I think.
All right. Hey, thanks for stopping by the studio. I know you got a busy weekend.
Close, Dan.
But we appreciate you cruising through, and again, thanks for everything you did for the sport. Congrats on tonight.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. So we got to wrap up here. The Luke Thomas Show is going to start up next. I want to thank all of our guests, including Dan Henderson, Art Davie, Sean Wheelock, Jimmy Smith, Bruce Buffer, and, of course, Dave Manley over there, the creator of MMA Bobbleheads. Go to MMABobbleheads.com. Bobblehead.com. And also on social media, it's /MMA Bobblehead on Facebook and Instagram. Reminder, yet again, at the Planet Hollywood inside the Miracle Mile on Saturday. Not tomorrow, Saturday. Dan Henderson will sign from 10 to 11:30, and Chuck Liddell will be there from 12 to 1:30. Also, Bruce Buffer got released today. Go out and get one. All right, for Dan and Danny and Goze and the other Dan and Dave, I'm George. Have a nice weekend and go out there and be a champion.